Hello everybody and welcome to the HLTCO YouTube channel. Today's video is going to focus on Ipswich Town and their incredible run of form under Kieran McKenna. It's maybe a story that you don't know a great deal about. Obviously Ipswich currently reside in the third tier of English football, and whilst I like to think that you can have huge amounts of interest at any level of the professional game, it's fair to say that it's not necessarily been a particularly headline grabbing division for quite some time, League One. But what Kieran McKenna and the Tractor Boys are doing, particularly over the last couple of months, has been quite incredible. They are currently on a run of 12 games unbeaten. 11 of those games have had clean sheets in them. Most recently, I just think it's probably worth pointing out at this stage that I'm recording this video on Tuesday morning ahead of their home game against Port Vale this evening. They are on the back of a 6-0 victory over Charlton Athletic at home, so it's been an incredible run of form for them. They find themselves second in the League One table, and hopefully today I'm going to go into a little bit of detail to unpick exactly what Kieran McKenna and the coaching staff behind the scenes at Portman Road have done to ensure that Ipswich are on the cusp at this stage of promotion to the Championship once again. Having spoken to a number of Ipswich fans over the last couple of days about the exact keys to the success they've had under Kieran McKenna this season, they seem to all really focus on the fluid nature of their formation. I think it's probably easiest to nail it down to a 3-4-1-2. That in itself might be a little bit hard for you if you haven't watched Ipswich to get your head around in terms of how they operate from week to week. But I think the most important factor in their success this season has come on the flanks, with two overlapping fullbacks in Leif Davis and Wes Burns really providing that attacking thrust for them. Both men have over 15 goals and assists across the League One campaign so far, and they have been absolutely devastating really for Ipswich all season long. As I mentioned, they find themselves second in the table at the moment, just behind Plymouth and just in front of Sheffield Wednesday, but the run of form they have been on in recent weeks really does point towards them finishing this season with a flourish and probably securing automatic promotion with some room to spare if they can continue to be as dangerous with those two wide men as they have been so far. And I think really, the main point to make in this video in relation to Kieran McKenna is that his tactical ideology is one which has been born out of football from a higher level. You don't want to necessarily throw League One teams under the bus, but you don't necessarily see these sides playing with a degree of fluency that Ipswich have in recent times, and I think that is really what is setting them apart from the chasing pack as things stand. What are we now, in the middle of April? Whilst I have made reference there to the two overlapping fullbacks, I think it's also fair to say that there are a number of different tools throughout their 11 who can really be of use to them across a 90-minute match. Luke Wolfenden, a 24-year-old centre-back, is extremely confident on the ball. He will happily bring the ball out from the back and look to spray passes left and right. I have had numerous Ipswich fans talk to me in recent days to suggest that he is a genuine Rolls Royce of a defender and someone that can really go on to play at a higher level. Hopefully with them, obviously they are looking to secure promotion to the Championship by the time this campaign comes to a close, and therefore he can go up the divisions with Ipswich Town. But I think many of them expect Luke Wolfenden to be a Premier League defender before too long, whether or not that is still in Ipswich colours. In the middle of the park, you've got Sam Morsey, who, according to numerous Ipswich sources, is probably their most important player, given his ability to break play up and distribute it from there. He has been joined since January by Massimo Luongo, who of course had that loan spell with Ipswich back in 2012, and his influence in the middle of the park has really taken Ipswich onto another level since that January window, with that pair driving the team forward and being able to keep the ball with real regularity, which at League One level can be a real differentiator when you are looking to get into the final third as often as possible. And this is one of these videos that is going to create a little bit of controversy. I have had plenty of Plymouth fans in my DMs and my mentions over the last couple of days since I announced that I was doing a video on Ipswich to suggest that they have just bought the league. It's something that I am going to get onto in a little bit more detail in a moment, but you look at Luongo, you've got a player there that admittedly has decent pedigree when it comes to playing further up the footballing pyramid, but he does have previous history with Ipswich, and he has been brought in on a free transfer. So quite clearly, it is just savvy business rather than just throwing money at a project and hoping to, buy success that way. It is a very savvy purchase, and it is one which has really driven Ipswich on since January to enable them to be established in that real push for automatic promotion come the end of the season. All of that being said, I think it's fair to say that the headline for Ipswich this season has been at the head of the side. And in Connor Chaplin, they have a striker that has 22 goals to his name now this season, following that hat-trick against Charlton Athletic last weekend. He is someone who has won all sorts of admirers across the Ipswich fan base because of his high pressing, because of his finishing, because of his ability to link play. And of course, the headline from his campaign so far on an individual level has been the 22 goals that he has scored. But alongside that, he has brought a real cohesion to the front line for Ipswich, been that talisman, but also shown a complete lack of ego. And I think that is something that has run through all of my conversations with Ipswich fans about their progress this term, because quite clearly, you can have as much talent as money as you want in any football club, but if you don't have that cohesion with everyone pulling in the same direction, you won't get anywhere really. And Ipswich, quite clearly under Kieran McKenna, the opposite is true. They are really bonded as a group, and everyone is working towards that final goal of promotion, and Connor Chaplin just happens to be the figurehead for it, given the 22 goals that he has scored so far this term. When you then throw Nathan Broadhead into the mix, a January addition from Everton, he has 16 appearances for Ipswich and has really performed miracles in their first team side since the January window. You have George Hurst, who has arrived from Leicester City on loan. He has been a pretty potent attacking threat, and Freddie Didapo, who can always be relied upon for a goal as well. You just have a unit at the head of that Ipswich side, backed up of course by the two solid centre midfielders. You have the overlapping fullbacks, you have Wolfenden in the centre of the back four that can bring the ball out. There are just so many tools with which Ipswich can now hurt their League One opposition from week to week, and you have that defensive solidarity that has become part and parcel of Kieran McKenna's tactical ideology. You mix that with the goals from Chaplin and all of the supporting cast, and it really does feel as though they will be a side that are there or thereabouts at the very top of the table by the time the season comes to a close. There is no doubt that if they are to win promotion from League One this year, there will be all sorts of caveats placed on their success by their detractors in League One across that promotion race, because they have spent heavily for the League One standard across the January window with 4 new arrivals. But it is also important to highlight that Paul Cook, the man that immediately preceded Kieran McKenna in the Ipswich hot seat, spent a lot of money and brought a lot of players in to not much effect. And I think the quality of the additions they have made and the laser focus they have had on the specific players they needed to actually get this team working has really seen them reap the rewards in the months that have followed. You look towards this Ipswich side, it isn't one that was doing particularly well in December. They were bumbling around in the playoff places and looking like they might lose a bit of momentum when it came to automatic promotion, but instead those 4 signings have really galvanised the group. They have led to a more settled starting 11 from week to week, and quite clearly the tactical ideology that Kieran McKenna has been looking to cultivate for a year or two in the Ipswich job has come to fruition now, and they find themselves in mid-April really pushing on and looking like they are going to finish the season at a mighty pace. Having spoken to their fans pretty extensively in preparation for this video, they are just brimming with joy at the way they have seen their team be galvanised by Kieran McKenna across the last 3 or 4 months. They have seen players like Leif Davis, who I've previously mentioned, come in and really prove to be a potent force, particularly from set pieces. I think I spoke to somebody who said they scored 2 goals from set pieces all the way through the previous season, and now 30% or so of their goals have come via a dead ball. You look towards the entire picture with their 950 minutes recently without conceding a goal, which set a new club record in terms of consecutive minutes without being beaten at the back. All of these things go towards a real groundswell of opinion that Kieran McKenna is a coach who should be taken seriously. Of course, from their perspective, regardless of the fact that Ipswich Town are a club with huge pedigree in the English game, there will be genuine worries about him being poached away across the summer. But at the same time, I'm sure he feels very happy about the general direction of travel for Ipswich Town and wants to play a part in that in the long term. It's fair to say there has been a genuine explosion of interest when it comes to Ipswich Town crowds. You look at both them and Norwich City over there in Suffolk and Norfolk respectively, and it's fair to say they have fan bases that can be galvanised and drawn out from sitting at home on a weekend if they feel motivated to do so. And despite the fact that Ipswich Town find themselves currently in the third tier of the English game, they are regularly getting crowds of 25,000 or more. I believe they have had to cap the season ticket list at 21,000 and have already sold out for next season. There has been a crowd at Portman Road, I believe, this year of 29,000. All of these numbers are quite mind-boggling really when you consider that in the Championship towards the end of their stay they were getting between 14 and 16,000 on average. So quite clearly it's not just a case of the division that the team plays in, it's about the general feel around the place, and Kieran McKenna has really brought that back into a positive frame of mind. And I think maybe if they can continue along this same trajectory, they are going to be one hell of a force should they be promoted next season in the Championship. There is no doubt that if they are to win promotion to the Championship this season, they will have plenty of detractors across the game that do want to reference the money that has been spent. They do have relatively new American ownership at the club, but their CEO has been very, very keen to stress in recent times that their actual spend in the transfer market is close to nil, given the sales of players like Flynn Downs and Andre Dazelle, which has enabled them to go back in from a purchasing perspective and make very sensible buys. And that is why they have been able to invest in January, and it's why Kieran McKenna has got this squad firing on all cylinders. Of course you do have to put that in there as a necessary calculation in the entire picture for Ipswich, because without that investment in January they probably wouldn't find themselves anything close to where they are now. But when you look at the fortress-like home record they have at Portman Road, when you look at the solid defensive displays that they've been putting in, to be honest, solid is probably underselling it quite dramatically, given the fact they do have 11 clean sheets in their last 12. Everything seems to be pulling in the same direction, and they are a football club that after a long period in the relative wilderness now look to be back on a very steep upward curve. I think upon first glance you could look at their manager in Kieran McKenna, the man who is responsible of course for this fantastic run post-January, and suggest that he isn't actually warranting the level of psychoanalysis that I'm about to give him, because he has this calm, collected demeanour on the touchline. But I do think that through conversations with a fair few Ipswich fans over the last few months, he does resemble something of a straight A student, very diligent, will keep his head down, won't necessarily bang on too much about his accomplishments. But with that, you can, if you are a fan that wants to see your manager ranting and raving on the touchline, or making bold proclamations in post-match press conferences, mistake that for an element of him not caring. But I think he is one of those managers who is one of the new school, shall we say. He has been schooled under the likes of Jose Mourinho. He has quite clearly got a very clear tactical ideology when it comes to how he wants Ipswich Town to operate from week to week. But I don't think he necessarily feels that he has earned his stripes yet, and he is very much at the beginning of his managerial career. He wants to do everything by the book, and he wants his players to buy into that calm demeanour that he has shown throughout his time as Ipswich boss. And I think they now are to a degree under his spell. Obviously it is a results business, and the Ipswich fans themselves would have far more grumbles and gripes if they weren't flying high at the top of the League One table. But right now they find themselves playing such scintillating football that his calm demeanour is something which is fed into the overall feel of that football club, and he's actually being a source of comfort rather than something to question. The backroom team working with Kieran McKenna at Portman Road are also believed to be pretty deep thinkers when it comes to marginal gains, and of course in the modern game that is something you need to be aware of in every single aspect. There have been slight tweaks made to certain aspects of their pre-match routines, and even at Portman Road now they have switched it around when they win the toss so that they attack their most vocal section of fans first, because they like to make fast starts and try and get in front in games so that teams have to put them under pressure in chase, at which point more gaps will open up for them to exploit. And it's these little changes that have been made by Kieran McKenna and his coaching staff which have really won fans over in the long run. Of course, I am recording this on Tuesday morning. They are going to play Port Vale tonight, and I really don't want to jinx their performance or result. They are playing a Port Vale side that haven't won any of their last 7 games, and as far as I can see, they don't have a victory away from home under their belts since they went to Forest Green on New Year's Day and ran out winners there. And of course, Forest Green have now been relegated from League One, so it's fair to say that was pretty much a routine victory for Port Vale. That said, stranger things have happened in football, and as much as all signs at this point in time do seem to indicate an Ipswich victory this evening, I am also aware that recording this may well put a bit of a jinx on them. To summarise my view on the quality that Ipswich have shown throughout the last 9 months or so, but particularly since that January transfer window, it's fair to say that it's not necessarily a rags to riches story. You've got a club here that have huge pedigree within the English game. They have a very sizable fan base who, as I've just mentioned, can be galvanised if the football is attractive and it is getting results. But with all of that in mind, there still needs to be a collective spirit that you can foster as a coach, and quite clearly Kieran McKenna has come into Ipswich Town and done a fantastic job. I don't think he was necessarily a manager that many people expected to have, a huge impact when he first took over the role. I've just mentioned it in the video myself. You had a manager in Paul Cook that came into Ipswich, and there was a real hope that he would be the man to take them back to former glories. You look at Kieran McKenna, he didn't have a coaching CV which suggested this was in his future, but at this stage, if he continues along a similar trajectory with Ipswich, there will be all sorts of clubs further up the footballing food chain that are looking to lure him away from Suffolk for riches or Premier League football. That said, if his whole persona is something to go by, then you can look towards the way he has handled himself as Ipswich boss and potentially see him as a man that is in it for the long haul. You don't necessarily want to say this for every club, but I think Ipswich Town do genuinely represent something of a sleeping giant. It's not so long ago, I say this as a 34-year-old man that remembers it quite clearly, that they were in European competition with George Burley there. So there is potential for Ipswich to go back up the leagues. But then at the same time, there are all sorts of clubs that reside in divisions you wouldn't necessarily expect. You look at the League One promotion race, and Sheffield Wednesday are a club that shouldn't really be, given their stature, in the third tier of English football. So it isn't just a case of throwing money at something and expecting success. You need to put the right people in place, you need to have the right coaching staff, the right tactical ideology, and even if you are to spend money, as Ipswich Town did in January, you need to make sure that you spend it in the correct fashion. And with the 4 arrivals they brought in, they have done exactly that. So all credit to Kieran McKenna, regardless of the money that has been spent. I know that will ruffle a fair few feathers, but having read into it quite extensively over the last few days, I have all sorts of admiration for him and the way that Ipswich have gone about their business, particularly across the last 3 or 4 months. Hopefully you have enjoyed this video today. I will sign off there. If you have enjoyed it, please do click like on the video, please do subscribe to the channel. I will be, as I said at the very beginning, looking to actually do more videos going forward. It's not something that has been the case for the last couple of months for reasons that have sort of been beyond my control, but with that in mind, I just want to say thank you to everybody for continuing to watch this, for continuing to support me, whether it be on YouTube or whether it be over on Twitter. It's really been a pretty wild ride for me since January, but I am loving every moment of it, and hopefully you will be in it for the long haul alongside me. So I will sign off there and bid you all a very good day. Cheers.